folks in SPD land and leaders across the country. Welcome to Knowledge and Nonsense. We have an amazing show tonight with some very inspirational and knowledgeable guests. Tonight's topic is going to be based around leadership. Lots of people strive in their careers to become leaders and climb that corporate ladder or walk those steps to mitigate themselves away from being led into the one leading. And we're going to explore why. Why does anyone want to be a leader? And leaders come in many names and forms. In terms of tenure, there's an interesting statistic. The average CEO's tenure is only 8 years, right? Those in the financial services have the longest tenure of 9.7 years. And those in energy have the shortest tenure. So if you look at some of these statistics, top leadership roles have a very short lifespan. And with that said, I would love to begin the conversation here in tonight's episode on Knowledge and Nonsense. So my producer, please bring out our guests. Hey, Tony, Dwayne.
Good evening.
Casey, how are you?
Evening.
How's everyone?
Good. Very good.
Well, welcome to the show. Thanks for spending some time with us this Tuesday night. And before we begin, Dwayne, where are you from and what do you do, sir?
Well, I currently reside in Cincinnati, Ohio. I am Director of Sterile Processing and or Materials Distribution.
Oh, okay. Well, we definitely speak some familiar language. Sir Casey, where are you from? What do you do, sir?
Hello, everyone. I'm currently in Rochester, Minnesota, and I'm an independent contractor assessing sterile processing departments.
Oh, awesome. And the infamous, the one and only, Mr. Tony Thurmond. How are you, sir? Where are you from? What do you do?
I'm great. I'm the manager for Dayton Children's Hospital Sterile Processing Department.
So tonight's show is about leadership, and I find it interesting when we talk to many of our peers about sterile processing leadership and their entry into this field. There seems to be at times a familiar thread. Tony, did you ever aspire to become a leader in sterile processing?
Well, it was a situation where I initially began in the military, in the Air Force, and had the opportunity to work under several great leaders. And I was able to look at how they led and aspired to be like them. So I knew that I felt I had the ability to get in there and could do a good job. Felt I knew the job very well. So thought I wanted to be a leader in this field.
So in your own words, which is the only words you can use, right? Why do you think people become leaders? Do people just wake up and say, hey, I'm going to throw the dart. I'm going to be that. I'm going to be a leader. Why?
I think a lot of people look at the job that managers and directors, supervisors do. They look at that and they feel, I've got some of those skills. I got those abilities. I think I can jump right in and do that. I think for a lot, it's a nice step. Some it's a very hard step, because it's a little bit more eye-opening once they get on the other side.
I see Casey shaking his head. Casey, jump in there. Why leadership? Did you select leadership or did it select you?
I did select it, and I'm going to flip what Tony just said. When I saw a leadership opportunity, I knew that someplace that I was lacking was specifically like conflict resolution skills. I didn't have very many. And so, Tony, what I saw is an opportunity to enhance a skill that I kind of was missing through getting into leadership. And so there may be people out there that see leadership as, yes, there are some people that say, I've got those skills, I can contribute that way. But some other people may say, this can be a way to build up myself and make myself a better all-around person, whether it's professionally or personally. So, that's very true for some people also. And of course, for a lot of people, it's money also, right?
Interesting. I know in my earlier years of just looking through the window of leadership, I was wondering how much do they make? Dwayne, why leadership, sir?
Well, for me, similar to Tony, I started in the military in the U.S. Army as a combat medic and surgical tech. And being a surgical tech in the Army, we worked in sterile processing as well. It was one job. we would do our cases during the day, and in the evening we'd go to sterile processing to help, pull cases for the next day and clean instruments. We would do, 3-month rotations, 3 months in OR, 3 months in SPD. And when I got out of the military, I found out it was two totally separate worlds who spoke two totally different languages, and found just a lot of friction and, conflict between, the two departments. And I was used to, it being one team, but out in the civilian sector, it just seems to be a lot different. Mm-hmm. So I was able to speak both languages. So I found myself in SPD quite a bit because in the civilian sector, I spent a lot of times as an orthopedic PA. And of course, those of us who know orthopedics and spines, having multiple vendor trays and, huge setups, I was always having problems with, dirty instruments or instruments not disassembled for cleaning. So I just found myself always in SPD cleaning my own instruments. And, one thing led to another, and people kind of pushed me into leadership, because I was able to speak, both languages.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And Tammy said it looks easy from the outside. Touche. And that's my story wasn't as noble, right? I used to see my director in SPD. I'm like, all this guy does is go to meetings. He types a few emails, goes to a meeting, and that's it, right? He's not putting together trays. He's not answering the phone, delivering a case card. He never has to don PPE ever. I think I can do that. That's easy. And then the next day happened, right? I was in a leadership role and the wall started caving in. Totally unprepared. And I had a hard walk on a very short path. What are some of the benefits of leadership, Tony? What if you had to do it over again, what are some of those life lessons, benefits that you would share to some leaders, some folks thinking about becoming leaders in our field?
Well, I think in order to be a leader in this field, you have to understand your customers. So I think Dwayne and I have this experience, been in the military as surgical tech, in the military as well. So when I go up to the operating room and there's issues or concerns that a doctor or tech is bringing to my attention, I can speak that language and I can have that conversation with them. And I can, there's times where I can point out that the challenge or the error is coming from your end. And I think that's been easy for me in that aspect to be able to go in and have those conversations with these surgeons and OR staff. So the challenges, like I said, I think when you get into this field, you really need to learn your customers and learn what they do, because you'll need to step in those roles to put yourself in that position, often to understand their challenges.
Dwayne, in your climb in leadership and transitioning from the military to civilian, did you experience the same type of challenges? One differentiator is what you said was there was one team in the military versus what you saw in civilian world. Was that one of the biggest hurdles you had to overcome?
Oh, it was a complete culture shock. But, again, if I'm being honest and transparent, the biggest hurdle was me. I had to learn to conquer myself because, again, not having a leader to really mentor me or to help develop me, I kind of, mimicked a lot of the leadership that I learned in the military, and I quickly learned in the civilian sector, being a drill sergeant just, doesn't work. You find yourself in HR quite a bit.
Right.
So, but no, it was a total culture shock. And so it took me years to learn how to actually develop a team, how to actually communicate with my team, how to talk to my team instead of at my team, how to trust my team and how to delegate, and, instead of, just trying to do everything myself, because I trusted my work. I trusted, my abilities and so forth.
Interesting. Casey, as an independent consultant in this space, I would imagine that you have to reinvent your communication approach a lot, because you're in front of different audiences. What's the challenges of leadership in your space as an independent consultant? Are they different than folks who are not traveling around visiting multiple hospitals, cities, states, etc.?
Well, of course, every leadership team has its own style, right?
Mhm.
They develop their own style. And Dwayne, I'm sure that what I was going to say for benefits is I learned leadership by looking at others around me. And you probably did too when you got into the civilian role and were part of a team. You kind of look around and pick up what's good of the people around you, and hopefully you discard what isn't very good, right? Or you kind of ignore that, right? So getting to work with a lot of different leadership teams, for me, it's observing and seeing what works and what is successful, and hopefully taking that into myself. Again, not only in my professional life, but in my personal life too, and learning what works to lead people and to get great results from a team.
I would like to, if you don't mind, I'd like to follow up with something Casey said. And again, I'm not trying to sound critical, towards anyone, but I actually did not like the leadership that I saw in the civilian sector, and that was problematic for me because being in the OR, it was just a lot of finger pointing, a lot of blaming. One of the things I quickly felt working on the OR side is that I was part of the problem. I saw what we were doing in the OR contributing to, the bigger problem, but yet on the OR side, we never owned our piece of the problem. And, and it was everything just kind of rolled downhill to SPD. So again, I would find myself down in SPD, kind of trying to proactively avoid that downstream effect. I would take care of my own instruments and so forth. Then the SPD staff would kind of latch on to me and want me to teach them. And this happened from place to place to place that I went, because I spent 22 years on the road as a consultant. And, and I quickly realized that, every place I go to has the same problems. No one's properly training, the people in SPD. They don't have a structured training program. Vendors are just dropping off trays with no IFUs, no instructions, no count sheets, So we've all been there, but I never really saw any leadership that I wanted to mimic or, to aspire to be. The leaders that I saw, again, they were very hands-off. Whenever it was, things were escalated to them. Again, they were the judge, jury, executioner before, getting all the facts, things like that. And, the sterile processing department, it was just a place of, punitive, consequences and so forth. There just seemed to be no investigating, problems and, situations. And I just didn't want to be that way. So I actually learned my leadership from leadership seminars, from self-help, books and programs. So, I just kind of took things and practiced and like, oh my goodness, that worked. I can't believe that worked. So there was a lot of trial and error. And again, you mix that with multiple trips to HR. So that's pretty much how I learned.
Okay, and that's thanks for sharing it with our audience. Tony, last week or the week before, Dwayne put a pretty interesting quote or question, I should say, on LinkedIn. And we started the show by sharing the tenure of a U.S. CEO, like 8 years. SPD leaders, specifically managers and directors, many are not lasting 8 years. Many are lasting 2 to 4 years, even shorter. Tony, why such a high turnover with SPD leadership?
Well, I can tell you, I will be very transparent and say that I've turned over quite a bit. And part of that thinking for me is that I love a challenge. And I feel like when I go to a facility, and experience the challenge and feel I overcome the challenge, and the challenges become a lot less, you kind of have that drive to need more of a challenge. That's been part of my career. There's been other opportunities that I was at where during the interview, they wanted everything turned around and corrected. And but they didn't, when you get in there, they didn't want to participate and put the funds into what was needed to make it happen. And once again, I was very transparent to let them know that in order for this to work properly, then we have to work together. And instead of building new robotic suites in the OR, I need the equipment to take care of your robotic instruments. So those are conversations that were, had to have, to be had. And then, like I said, I think that sometimes you fall out of, I don't want to use the term fall out of love, but you don't see the teamwork with your senior leadership that you saw as you initially went in. So over time, you start to lose that. So you start to lose faith that I'm not my department is not a department that's a priority for them. So that can be challenging for a manager.
Oh yes, I don't know if you saw it, but when you mention that you get a job or you're hired for a position or a contract, and they tell you what they want fixed, and you bring a solution, but they fail to. It's almost like going to the Great Wizard of Oz, and he gives you the heart, but then the body's not there, right? When you said that, there was a universal head nod amongst the panel. Everyone resonated with that experience. Anita said, I think it's also up to leadership to change the perception in Central Sterile. Agreed. Casey, why are SPD leaders, and after this we want to define what do I mean, what do we mean when we say an SPD leader? Because SPD leaders can also, there's not only managers. But Casey, how come SPD leaders have such short tenure in our space, our industry?
Well, from my experience, it's because new opportunities come up, and once for a leader at the entry level leadership, right, you begin to develop skills. If you're lucky enough to have a supportive team, you can learn from them. If you're not, you can learn from that too, right, Dwayne? Whether or not your team is supportive of you or not, or your OR team that you're working with. And so I think that, as Tony said a little bit earlier, I forget exactly how you put it, but you get bit by the bug, right? And you like that challenge, and you want to use the skills that you're learning to have greater and greater responsibility. And for many SPD leaders that I've known, it's making a bigger and bigger difference, sort of like beginning at department level, maybe hospital level, maybe enterprise level, maybe nationwide. And so to me, in my experience, that is why the turnover is so much. It's not so much really leaving SPD, but it's moving into new leadership positions as you learn skills and want to develop yourself. And in many cases, many leaders that I've known want to make a bigger impact on their patients.
Yeah, absolutely. Even when interviewing at hospitals or companies in general, it's a bilateral interview. You're interviewing the candidate, but that candidate is also interviewing you to make sure you're a good fit for his or her future. Dwayne, in your post, what inspired you to write that post? What space were you in?
Well, to be quite honest, I was actually I was going through a period of frustration in my current role, and just kind of taking something that Casey said there, and as well as Tony. When I tend to go into a facility or organization, normally I'm recruited. I don't seek out positions. Facilities actually seek me out. So we have a come to Jesus meeting, at that time, of the interview, and they let me know what's going on, why they're seeking someone with my skill set. the vision that they have for their SPD department. And, I'm very blunt, very transparent with, based on, my history and so forth, what I've seen, what it takes to transform teams, as well as the department resources that are going to be needed, all the way from, staff retention program to staff training to, equipment, support and so forth and so on. And, I'm given the blessing coming into the facility. I get the support from leadership, but oftentimes somewhere after that first year or two, leadership tends to change, and then the focus tends to shift from, what brought me there to now you're just a regular employee, fall in line, do as we say do, no, we don't have time for that. We're going to shift direction and focus. And then the job, it's not fun anymore. And I heard long ago, someone said, when your work is no longer fun to you, it's time to find something else. Because I enjoy what I do. I get up on Saturday mornings, Sunday mornings, I go into work, again, not because it's work to me. It's because there's something that needs to be done. I need to catch up, from the week or get a jump on for the next week, again, to stay ahead and so forth. And when it starts feeling like work, and I start, I have to go in here and deal with, this place, that's a bad place for me. So, not having supportive leadership and so forth, or, not having leaders that are engaged in, what the SPD department is doing or how we're trying to grow and develop, So, like I said, I was kind of going through something with upper management, and it was kind of a early warning that I won't be here much longer.
Understood. Well, I'm gonna take a commercial break, but when we come back, the first question out of off the bench is gonna be, what are some common expectations associated with leadership? So what are some common expectations associated with leadership? And when we return, Tony, you're up to bat, sir. So let's take a quick break to pay some bills, and we'll be right back here on Knowledge and Nonsense. Welcome back to Knowledge and Nonsense. The question leading to our next segment is, what are some common expectations associated with leadership? Tony, what say you, sir?
I'm going to start off by sharing a story with you. So, had an interview for a manager position, and it was a staff panel interview that part of the interview process. And everyone in the from the staff wanted to have people all held accountable, treated the same. And I see you laughing, Dwayne. So everyone wanted accountability. So get hired for the position, brought into the position, started seeing that some behaviors of some of the staff, and some staff were in the interview process. And when they were held accountable, no, Tony, I didn't want that. I wanted you to address these other two people over here. I didn't want you to address me. So be careful what you expect, I guess is what I want to say by, if you ever get an opportunity to be a part of an interview panel like that. But, they expect someone to be fair. They expect someone to come in, leaders to be fair, and to treat them fair. And I'm a big basketball fan. I followed Coach John Wooden for years. So one of his sayings was that I love. He says that I'll treat you. He told his team, he said, I'll treat you all fairly, but I won't treat you all the same, because each individual brings a different, unique challenge with their persona each day. And so you may have to give someone a little bit more direction, a little more guidance than what you would for the next person who has it internally already, if that makes sense. So, but I think another thing that I'll just share, that I think, I don't know if this is an expectation, but I think that staff often feel that leaders don't have feelings. And I beg to differ with that. We do have feelings. We want you to succeed. We want everyone to be successful. And our goal is to help get you there. So, there may be some bad apples out there, but I think for the most part, we all want people to be successful.
I would agree with that 100%. During an interview years ago, and I'm sure the words coming out of the panel's mouth was not what I heard, because what I heard was, can you multiply fish? Can you make bread expand? That's not what they said. What they truly said was fix the place. Dwayne, what are some leadership expectations that are associated with, being a leader within our field?
So for me, I tend to focus more on the executive leadership, my relationship and communication, walking through the door with them. And, some of the common expectations is, being able to transform the team, the SPD team, to develop them through, proper training and so forth. I always hear, they have this expectation that, again, yes, you walk on water. You're going to come in. You're going to fix everything. You're going to fix processes. You're going to eliminate dirty instruments, broken instruments. You're going to fix the communication between SPD and OR. You're going to make sure, all case carts are, complete and so forth. You're going to, deal with, it's expected that, you're going to increase physician satisfaction or customer satisfaction and so forth. And again, those are not unrealistic expectations. They are challenging, because what I found is, number one, I can't do this by myself. All this takes a team, not just in SPD, but, cross department, teams and so forth. When it comes to fixing processes, yes, SPD has a lot to, do with a lot of the processes, but the customer does as well, such as, missing instruments, AMI standards are very clear. AST guidelines, AORN guidelines, they're very clear, that instruments are to be wiped off at the point of use, or gross soil is to be removed. They're to be put back into their original, trays and so forth, returned. Of course, that's not how we see instruments. They come down heavily soiled, tissue, blood, bone, cement, you name it, mixed up. And then they wonder why we can't get instruments turned over in 15 minutes and, and why we have to look for instruments. And, so when you meet with, you have these cross-functional teams, and you get to the root cause of some of the problems and challenges, and you try to, put plans together. Oftentimes you're met with resistance. We don't have time for that, or that's not our responsibility. And, you can show them the standards. Hey, I'm talking to the nurses. AORN states, surgical techs, AST states, same as what AMI states, but yet they don't want to hear it. They don't want to participate. And again, I'm not pointing the finger, but I'm just looking at, there's expectations of new leadership. And if the customers are not partnering with SPD, again, we're just doing more of the same. So if they're not willing to come to the table or to share solutions or, make some concessions, then change is not going to take place. So I think the expectation that this leader is going to create change, it's not just in the leader's hands to do this. It's a team effort. And if they don't understand that, then I think everybody's going to walk away from the table frustrated.
Yeah, I can understand that. Casey, in SPD, we know there's many different titles, right, and positions. What titles, at what point in the SPD title or role does leadership become actualized?
Oh, that's a great question. But can I speak to the question we just had for just a second? Because something I love about discussions like this is that Tony and Dwayne both talked about expectations on leadership from different perspectives, right? Tony talked mostly about expectations from his team, and Dwayne talked a lot about expectations from leadership. And to step back to why leaders leave, what I've seen in my career going through many different hospitals is those expectations coming from above are often, I think, what make leaders leave. It's and Brian Reynolds spoke to it too in a comment in the chat there. So it's those expectations, and then oftentimes I see on new leaders, especially those frontline leaders, the more and more expectations heaped upon them all the time. Have you guys noticed that too? Like you come into one job description, but over time, months or years, more and more things get put upon that first rung of leadership, those frontline leaders, and that's something that can cause burnout and cause them to leave. So really cool to hear both of your perspective, and I just think it's awesome to be part of discussions like this for that reason. And the comments are wonderful. I love reading the comments on the scroll down below. That's really fun. They really add to the conversation too.
Absolutely. I also believe that some leaders are not prepared to lead. We recently just shared some stories about the institution, false expectations, the goal being moved, but there's also that leader who is just ill-equipped for the task at hand. Dwayne, go for it.
So, I'm glad you said that, Dwayne, because that was one of the things I learned, as I moved from facility to facility around the country. I looked at, and again, no disrespect to anyone, to, our profession and so forth, but, I wonder, why do so many SPD departments fail, or why are they in that state of failing? And I looked at leadership. And one of the things I noticed about leadership, a lot of the people in leadership, they came from frontline, staff that, moved up through the ranks, lead to supervisor to manager and so forth. And one of the things I learned a while ago through a leadership seminar was, leaders have to be developed and so forth. They have to be developed. And I was thinking back on my career and who developed me. And I mean, to be honest, I was a terrible leader. Starting out, I was a terrible leader. I was good at getting things done, but I was terrible at developing people. I was terrible at motivating people. Like I said, I was a drill sergeant. I intimidated people. I yelled at people. So oftentimes, leaders are not prepared for the position that they're moving into, because from the outside, and I think someone wrote it earlier, from the outside, yes, it looks easy. They just go to meetings, they just sit at the computer, and blah, blah, blah. And then they actually get into the role where, they know the technical side of the job, but they don't know the business side of the job, which is a whole nother set of skills, human relations and financial planning and, strategic development, operations, oversight, regulatory compliance, and so forth and so on. So no one's, oftentimes they're not developed in those areas, which is why there's a lack of knowledge in regulatory compliance, in Joint Commission, readiness and so forth, because they still have that frontline mentality. And you'll see a lot of SPD leaders out there putting trades together and out there on the floor actually doing tech work. So I just brought in consultants to actually train all of my supervisors and managers in the business side of SPD. Stairs, I brought in their consulting division. They have a leadership development program, 101 and 201 and so forth. And, they teach the actual business side of SPD and leadership development. And now, 16 weeks later, my supervisor, they are they are hot to trot at this point. They are excited about these new skills that they've learned. They're now doing, staffing models. They're doing productivity management. They're doing daily planners and so forth. We've developed standard leader work. And I mean, they just now have this whole new capacity of skills that they can apply to run the business, the day-to-day operations and so forth.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
You're muted, Dwayne.
So you took time as the department leader or system leader to invest in your future leaders.
It wasn't just, I brought the proposal to my VP and I made a business case for it. And again, giving him some background and history from, SPD to SPD, what I've seen and why we had not been successful in, in certain areas and so forth. So he understood, and, collectively we got the money allocated for the training, and we invested in these leaders with the intent to retain them and so forth.
Awesome.
And yeah.
Awesome. I want to talk about leadership styles, right? Because there's a bunch of different leadership styles out there, and I'll be interested, as well as some members of the audience, what leadership styles best influence you, and what's your leadership style? Tony, what leadership style best would you say most influence you? You sort of led us into this question by sharing one of the folks you followed early on in your career.
Yeah, I think that the leadership styles, if you look at the different styles, I think for me, servant style is important. But I would also say that, and I'm not sure everyone will get this, but I'm going to throw it out there. Okay. Sometimes as a leader, you can use different styles and have a mix in your bag, so to say. Mm-hmm. So servant style is what I love coaching people. I love training people, teaching them the right way. But also, teaching the staff to be servants to their customers, as well as to themselves. So the information is there, the training is there. Grab what you can and use it for to better yourself. But I will say that a mixed bag has been successful for me.
Okay, and that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I don't know of any, and I haven't worked in every hospital in our beautiful country. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen too many SPDs where it's just a monotone hum of one thought process, one pace, one attitude. Casey, what leadership style do you adopt the most?
Well, absolutely. Servant leadership is where I tend to fall into. That's the way that I usually think is best to go about things. But man, Tony, you were right on. You have to have a lot of tools in your toolkit, because there are times when servant leadership will not serve you, or more importantly, your team that you're trying to support, right? There are times when you must adapt a more autocratic tone, or sometimes a more democratic tone, in order to get the results that your customers and your patients need. So you're right on. Servant leadership is great, and that's definitely where that's like my level where I end up. But understanding that we have a whole toolkit, and something like speaking to what Dwayne was talking about too, there's not a lot of mentorship for frontline leaders in sterile processing. and they may not even be aware that there are other opportunities out there or other styles of leadership, many of them, which they can learn to develop in themselves, so that they have a full tool belt, and use the right tool at the time, whether they're dealing with leadership above them or with their team, to make sure that they get the best results possible for their team or their patients. So you're right on, but that's I guess my take on it.
Awesome. Dwayne, what leadership style would you say you employ or have adopted?
So my default setting is transformational. I'm a transformational leader. However, Casey and Tony, again, they're spot on. Any I feel good leader, although you have a default mode, you still need to dabble in some of the other leadership styles, such as autocratic, democratic, servile leader, bureaucratic leader, because you're dealing with a lot of different personalities, a lot of different cultures, backgrounds, and so forth. So, being a servant leader is not going to be good for everybody. Being a bureaucratic leader is not going to be good for everybody, or a democratic leader. Sometimes there are situations that arise and you have to be an autocratic leader because you just need to take charge, make decisions. It's not time for, democracy. It's time. A decision has to be made, and we don't have the time for the democratic process. So, echoing, what Casey was driving, you got to have these other tools in your leadership toolbox and know when it's appropriate to use these different styles of leadership. But again, my default mode is transformational. I'm about transforming my department, processes, people, again, about being, have equality, fairness, and so forth. But again, there's times where I need to pull out, being an autocratic leader. And, when there's the team is vibing and, so forth, it's time to bring, that democratic leadership style. And sometimes, and I hate feeling this way, but sometimes when I have a well-developed team, then I kick into laissez-faire mode, where I just kind of back off and I lead from the back and let them, take the front. So I'm pretty much hands off because I've delegated and I trust, their abilities.
But how can we get to the technician that's awesome? I just got my first supervisor role. This is great. I'm so excited. How do we get to that person that maybe has only experienced like one type of leadership? How do we get to them and tell them that there's other tools out there and teach them what those tools out there is? What ways have you guys seen that works? Dwayne, you mentioned bringing in consultants. That's a great way. What other things can we do for that person to let them, to mentor them, go back to that again, and help them to learn different leadership styles that they can use when needed?
So I saw Brian Reynolds. He posted a comment about some places the supervisors and leaders are needed in day-to-day staffing, and they there's no resources or time for this training to take place. And again, I get it, and that's a very valid statement to make. However, you have to figure out, based on that facility, that environment, and so forth. Again, it's not something you can do alone. You're going to have to tap into the C-suite or your executive leaders, your leaders, and you're going to have to make that business case. You have to develop a plan and show them, the return on investment and so forth. And early on in my career, I was not very successful in getting much accomplished, or very much support from the C-suite. And I learned over the years, it's because the C-suite speaks a different language than those in the clinical setting. Because we say we need help. We're struggling, we're suffering, and they don't hear what you're saying. But if you learn to speak C-suite, which is data, if you can gather the data, you can show your daily volume of workload that comes in versus what your capabilities of putting out, and you show them these numbers, and they can crunch and they can say, well, you need more people. Exactly. So when you learn to speak C-suite, what I found is you kind of get more opportunities or resources afforded to you, but you have to be able to make that business case.
Absolutely. I would agree with that. Another, we mentioned our toolbox or our tool belt. Casey, one technique I've used in the past, I would pair off some of my young leaders with a senior leader in the C-suite of management. And I would approach my CFO and say, hey, do you mind mentoring Jack? He's 3 years in. He has a lot of aspirations. Good guy. Here's his some of his credentials. Here's what his team says about him. And I paired him up with different leaders within the organization because that cultural influence can really change a person's life.
Idea. That's a great idea. Yeah.
So
we send our SPD techs to the OR for observation, right? And we bring our OR techs down to SPD for during orientation, for example. Those are some things that work. Why don't we mentor? Why don't we have shadowing of the C-suite? That's a great idea. I love that.
Right. Who better to show you a budget than your CFO? You know. Randall said incorporating a variety of methods depending on the team you are supporting, experience in organizations, and having mentorships. Well said. She pretty much summed up the last parts of our conversation. Tony, new leaders in healthcare, not just SPD. I was big on books. I love to read. What tips or tools would you give? And I want everyone to take a shot at this. Up and coming leader who is aspiring to ascertain transformational leadership, who is grown in their craft. What's your advice?
So for one, I would say try to get into as many scenarios as you can. And when I say that, so for example, as a manager or director, our young leaders, when we are trying to bring them on board, I try to put them in different situations. One, to see how they're going to respond, but also to get their perspective on it. And there's nothing like learning right there at the moment. And but also, I think young leaders that get that move up in the department. One thing that's often overlooked is that they've gone from being side-by-side co-workers with the people that they are now asked to lead. And that can be challenging for some people. So I think as managers and directors, we should observe that and give them guidance on, hey, you're going to be looked at differently. You're going to be looked at with a different set of eyes. And it's not going to be comfortable most days. So I think just guiding those new people through that, but also let them know, like Dwayne mentioned earlier, there's leadership seminars out there. There's opportunities. It just doesn't happen on the job. You have to spend some time off the job learning and developing your leadership style.
Thanks for sharing that. Casey, what advice would you like to give these leaders who are trying to catch traction and really move their career?
Twofold. Number one, we talked about leadership seminars, but I found that more and more our HSPA local chapters, when they put on a seminar or a conference, they're bringing in people to talk about leadership. And I think that's just a great movement. That's something that I've noticed more and more. So attending, to Dwayne's point, getting your executive leadership to support new leaders going to conferences or seminars, even local ones, but of course national ones are great too. But even local ones, more and more, our chapters are bringing in leadership speakers to talk about leadership and then even act as a resource later on. Conferences and seminars are great opportunities to learn and talk to other people that are also new to leadership possibly. And second of all, both HSPA and CBSPD have leadership courses to take and leadership certifications. I know the HSPA book, the CHL, is a wealth of information about not only situational, but also higher level, philosophical discussions about leadership. And I would bet that the CBSPD one is as well, because they usually have pretty excellent material. So sending our new leaders through those courses to gain those certifications, another way to learn, by reading books, like you said, is and those are two ways that I see. Not very expensive ways, not very time-consuming ways, not taking them off the floor for very long periods of time, but great ways for them to be at least exposed to other opportunities in leadership or other ideas.
Well received. Dwayne, hashtag learn to speak C-suite. I absolutely love that. What are some tips or a gift you would like to give to some of our up and coming or aspirational leaders hoping to catch traction in the leadership space?
So one of the things I require of all my leaders, from lead techs to supervisors to managers, is so all of my lead techs, they are required to mentor one of our senior techs that they feel has the potential to move up into the lead position. My supervisors, they are required to mentor one of the lead techs to take over a supervisor role and so forth. So we do a lot of mentoring in our department. So you learn something, you teach it and so forth. So we do that, as well as going back to what Casey, talked about. There's CBSPD, HSPA. We now, we have the leadership certification courses and so forth. Well, again, I am a little bit more proactive. Yes, I can buy the books and, give them to staff, but I actually take the books and I make an actual training course. I break it every chapter down, make a complete lesson out of it, and I give classes on the weekends. So those who are who have aspirations to grow, develop, and attain their CHL and so forth, I actually teach the course. So again, it's free of cost. Again, I'm investing in my team. We're talking about leadership. I do some mentoring at that time as well. We talk about the skills needed. That's totally different from the technical skills, that they have. And I think it better prepares them and to know what to expect when they do cross over from frontline, to leadership. And I again, instead of being blindsided or, having this illusion that, what leadership is, they get real life lessons and examples and mentoring, as well as learning the skills that are going to be necessary to be functional, in this new role.
Awesome.
Well said. Always training your replacement. Forbes magazine, Michael Pollock, who's a member of the Forbes Council, have this council that are aligned to just manage their posts on leadership and business topics. And his article says, great leaders are always training their replacements. So I put the link up for this article. It's a bit aged, but the message still resonates. Randall said, aspire to be those who inspire you. Randall, well said. Tony, in your career in leadership, do you remember the boss or the event that really, or have you had a boss or event that made you question, do I really want to do this leadership thing?
I thought you were going to take that somewhere else. That's funny. That's great.
I've had several leaders, bosses that I can say I didn't always agree with their practices or agree with their techniques, but I always look to have a leader that cared for the team, cared for my team in sterile processing to make sure that we're successful. And if I don't see that, then that's challenging. So those are the type of leaders that speak good leadership game, but don't always follow through with it, and that can be challenging.
Interesting. Casey, how about you? Was there an event or a person that had you questioning, hey, do I really want to do this leadership thing?
I moved away from leadership because I discovered my love of education and educating technicians. That's where I found my true passion, and that's propelled me in my career since then. But as far as the good and the bad and the ugly, as it were, what Dwayne was talking about, being able to speak C-suite, I've worked with leaders that can do that and that cannot do that. And it's really hard to work with a director or executive director, for example, or whatever, those above you that cannot speak C-suite. That's really, really hard. That makes for a difficult environment in the department. And in my opinion, it affects culture too. If they can't, or if the C-suite doesn't let them in, if there's a glass door and you're knocking and you're not being let in either, that hospital culture can also be very detrimental too. So those are what I've seen. I'm going to say effective versus more versus less effective leaders are those that can really know how to get into the C-suite and know how to introduce themselves and know how to speak and portray the importance of the work that their staff are doing. That to me is effective versus ineffective.
Understood. Well received. Dwayne, in your career, was there an event or a person that had you take a moment to say, wait a minute, do I really want to engage, adopt, marry this leadership aspect of life?
I've questioned that decision so many times in my career because I did not have aspirations to become a leader. So I found joy in the process in developing the team. So when things really start getting start going off the rails, and I'm not getting a lot of participation from my leadership, and I just become another cog in the wheel. I begin to question my decision. Now, kind of like Casey, one of the things I would go back to consulting because it's a totally different vibe, a totally different world being a consultant versus being a staff, employee of the hospital, because as a consultant, they're paying you. And again, they're paying you good money to come in and provide solutions. So it's almost as if they're hanging on every word that comes out of your mouth, because again, that's what they're paying you for, is to come in and provide solutions. Whereas when you're a staff person, you can provide those same recommendations and solutions, and it's like it's just not received very well.
Yeah, seen that.
So I question the whole leadership versus just being a consultant coming in, providing the solutions and answers, picking up my check and walking away. But then there's that sense of, I'm not satisfied with just that, because I don't get to see this plan implemented. I don't get to see it through. I don't get to, kind of help them navigate around, the curves and the dips and so forth. So, like I said, it's, I don't know. It depends on which way the wind is blowing that day for me, but I've questioned, I guess for lack of a better term, my commitment to leadership. Again, based on the whole dynamic of the support that I'm provided or given. I just hate going in feeling like I have to fight for what is obvious, what is already known that we need as a profession, as a department. The guidelines are black and white. What is there to debate? This is what we need. And so, so when I'm constantly, doors are constantly shut in my face, yes, I begin to question, my effectiveness, or is this really, the path that I want to continue down, where, I'm having health issues and high blood pressure, and, because I'm trying to fight the good fight. I'm trying to support my team. I'm trying to get the resources that they need and so forth. But, it's that uphill climb on a oil slicked hill.
Hey, we get it. We totally get it. I want to thank you all, you gentlemen, for spending some time with us tonight. I want you to share with the audience where they can find you. You know, Tony, where can we find you at, sir?
Well, I'm on LinkedIn, you'll find me there. I'm active on there. So,
Okay, Casey.
I'm also very active on LinkedIn. That's my main social media platform that I work on. Casey Czarnowski, no Stanislaus.
Got it. And Dwayne.
Likewise, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm becoming a little bit more active. I've stayed away from social media, but however, on my LinkedIn page, my personal information is there. So if you like to reach out to me, again, my information is there and available to the public.
Hey, thank you all very much. This has been a fun and robust conversation. I
Thanks,
look forward
guys.
to seeing you in SPD somewhere, and especially at Scrub Board 2022. To our producers and our sponsors, thank you for allowing us to keep Knowledge and Nonsense going. And let's chat soon, gentlemen. Be safe. God bless. Have a good night.
thank you.
all.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.